I simply couldn't believe what I saw. Johnny, whom I had been married to for 7 years, was sitting on the table in the dining car with her friend Jim. I looked around thinking that there must be a conductor or a waiter somewhere, but strangely, there was none. At that moment, all the love I had for my wife died. This was supposed to be a fun excursion for the two of us to reconnect. I was surprised when she told me that Jim, her work friend, would be joining us. She insisted that he was a friend to both of us. But truth be told, I was indifferent to this guy, and at the time, I couldn't think of a single reason why he would want to come with us. But now I knew. I also knew that I would need evidence for my divorce. Oh yes, it was all over between us. Of course, seeing them doing it on the table slightly excited me, but I was not about to tolerate such disrespect. I took out my cell phone and started recording their date. I had no desire to watch or hear what they had to say. It seemed like they slept on that table for an eternity, and I couldn't believe how rough Jim was with her. She seemed to enjoy it. Maybe I should have been rough with her, but that just wasn't my style. Finally, they stopped, and Johnny fixed her dress. "We need to be careful," she said as they took their seats. "If George finds out about us, he won't be happy." "It doesn't matter," Jim said with a smirk. What? I thought to myself. This has been going on for a year. I knew Johnny and I had some strained relations due to my hectic work schedule, but that's what kept a roof over our heads. Sure, Johnny worked too, but whatever she earned went into things she wanted: clothes, accessories, salon visits, and so on. The whole idea of taking a weekend to travel by train, see the sights, and spend time in each other's arms was lost on her. "So, what are you going to do when you go back to him?" Jim asked. "Did you do what I told you about birth control?" he inquired. Johnny nodded. "Yes," she said. "I stopped taking it so I could get pregnant. I told George that I have my period this week, so he's not expecting any love." They both laughed heartily at this. "So, why do you stay with him?" Jim asked. "Obviously, you don't love him, or you wouldn't be treating him like this." "Well, it's not that I don't love him," she said. "I do like him enough, but I just don't have that passionate love for him anymore. Plus, he brings in a good salary, and you know I couldn't live on what I make." "You're staying with him for the money," he stated. She nodded. "To a large extent," she said. "I could never afford the comfort he provided on this trip, and neither could you." "When do you want to get together again?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe later, tonight, after he goes to sleep," she said. I had seen and heard enough and stopped the video. I went back to the sleeping car where Johnny and I had stopped and considered my options. Divorce was a given, but there had to be something more. Both her and her boyfriend needed to be held accountable. I took out my phone again and went to the contact section, searching for my lawyer's number. "Fred Juergens," the man said, answering the call. "Fred, it's George. I need you to start preparing divorce papers for me, and I want you to use the prenuptial agreement," I said. "Divorce?" Fred asked, surprised. "I've never been more sure about anything in my life," I said. "On what grounds?" Fred inquired. "Marital infidelity," I said. "I have a video, and I can send it to you if you need evidence." "Yes, do that," Fred said. "I have the prenuptial agreement here, so the paperwork won't take too long. When do you want the papers served to her?" "The sooner, the better," I said. "We'll be back in Springfield in a couple of days, so maybe you can arrange for her to be served at the station. I also need to find out everything I can about her boyfriend, Jim Simpson. He works with her." "I'll have our investigator look into it," Fred said. "Send me the video, and I'll take a look. Don't do anything foolish, understand?" "Yes, of course," I said. "You know me." "Yeah, I know," Fred said. That's why I said don't do anything foolish. Fred always had a way of making me laugh. We ended the conversation, and I sent the video to Fred. Then I leaned back in my seat and thought for a minute about what else I could do. I took out my tablet and connected it to my phone. After transferring the video to the tablet, I turned on my phone's hotspot and used it to connect my tablet to our home network through a VPN, or virtual private network. I had set this up some time ago to have secure access to my files from anywhere in the world. The first thing I did was log into our banking system and went through the typical dance. Closed joint cards, transferred funds, and so on. I didn't want to take any risks, even considering the prenuptial agreement. Another malicious thought crossed my mind. Johnny loved using the home computer for her personal emails. Luckily, she wasn't very savvy when it came to security, so I was able to log into her email account with a couple of mouse clicks. I copied the video first to the tablet, then to the home computer, opening her email client. I wrote an email, trying to mimic her tone. I used a cliched subject that sounded like hers. Check out my fun train ride. Then I attached the video to the email and sent it to everyone on her contact list. Everyone. Friends, family, her colleagues. Anyone I could. I watched it for a minute, then hit send. I opened the door to our compartment just in time to see one of the conductors. I gestured for him to come over when he looked up at me. "Everything all right, sir?" he asked. "Well, my wife says she wants to move to another compartment," I said. "Could you tell me which compartment Jim Simpson is in?" The conductor briefly checked his tablet before responding. "Do you want your wife's things moved to this compartment?" he asked. "Are you sure? It's in economy class and not as nice as this one." "That's life," I said. He nodded understandingly. "All right," he said. "Of course, I'll help you gather her things." We worked quickly, not caring much about how well her clothes were packed. Once we finished, I assisted the conductor in carrying her things to his compartment, which was less than half the size of ours. I chuckled, tossing her belongings onto his small bunk. Let her deal with it herself, I thought to myself. "I'll need to make her a new key card," the conductor said. He pulled out a white card from his pocket and inserted it into a magnetic recording device connected to his tablet. After finishing, he looked at me. "Do you know where she is?" he asked. I nodded. "I know where she was when I last saw her," I said. "Lead the way," he said. We walked through the entire train and entered the dining car. Johnny and Jim were still exchanging glances when we approached them. I sat on one of the chairs at the table, and the conductor caught Johnny's attention. "Yes?" she asked, looking anxious. "I need to give you your new key card," he said, "and take the old one." She looked surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked. Apparently, there was a mix-up in the seating arrangement. "So I need to issue you a new key," he said. This guy was as cool as a cucumber, I thought, annoyed. Johnny pulled out her key card and handed it to the conductor. He smiled and handed her the new card. "Thanks," he said. "Have a pleasant journey." He turned and walked away. Johnny glared at me. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm just making your little game with Jim easier," I said. Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You think I don't know about the two of you?" I asked. Johnny started to get nervous. She glanced at Jim, and he looked concerned. He checked her key card and noticed the compartment number. "Wait," he said. "This is the key to my compartment." I nodded. "I thought this way. You two wouldn't have to sleep on the dining table," I said. "I understand it might be a bit cramped in there, but that's how it goes." By the way, did Johnny ever tell you about the prenuptial agreement she signed when we got married? "What are you talking about?" Jim asked. "Well, if you're planning on taking someone's wife, you should first get to know her a bit," I said. "Agreed," Jim stammered. "Listen, this was all just for fun," he said. "We didn't mean anything by it," Johnny spoke up. "That's right, George," she said. "It won't affect our marriage in the slightest." "Really?" I asked, taking out my tablet. I scrolled the video to the part where they were talking and pressed the play button. "Listen to this," I said. "I do like him enough, but I just don't have that passionate love for him anymore. Plus, he brings in a good salary, and you know I couldn't live on what I make," Johnny's voice said in the video. "So, you're staying with him for the money," Jim said in the video. "So," I said, "I'm just a walking paycheck for you." "Darling," she began. I cut her off. "You'll never call me darling, sweetheart, dear, or anything else," I said. "I don't think you should even call me by my name. I think you should call me Mr. Duval. And since you don't consider yourself my wife, I'll take this," I added, removing her wedding ring. "And I'll take this," I said, grabbing her purse and pulling out the house key from the large key ring she kept there. I took off my wedding ring and placed it in front of Jim. "You can have this." "I don't need it anymore," I said. I turned to Jim. "In the prenuptial agreement she signed, Jim, it states that in the case of marital infidelity, the guilty party, in this case Johnny, gets absolutely nothing. I'll leave her with her clothes and jewelry. But that's it. I don't think she'll be able to continue paying for her car. Fortunately, I've filed the documents in her name, so it will hit her credit rating." "What are you doing?" he said, starting to stand up. I grabbed a fork and tried to stab his hand. He sat back down. "Don't mess with me," I said. "Please," Johnny said, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Mr. Duval, please don't do this." Mr. Duval, please. Can't you forgive me? And we can put this behind us?" "No," I said, rewinding the video to the point where they started discussing impregnating Johnny. I scrolled through the video so that both of them could clearly hear. "The two of you have been pulling this crap on me for a whole year, and you conspired to get pregnant by Jim and pass the child off as mine," I hissed. "Looking at Johnny, right now I hate you, and I pray to God that I never see you again." I looked at Jim before speaking again. "You wanted a deceitful woman? You got her," I said. "Good luck. I don't think you'll get much support from her family and friends." "What do you mean?" Johnny asked. I shrugged. "Check your email," I said. She took out her phone and opened the mobile mail app. "What have you done?" she asked. "I just shared your exploits with your family and friends," I said. "You looked so thrilled. I knew you'd love to share it with others." "You're awful," she hissed. "My parents just disowned me, and my sister says she never wants to see me again. My friends think I'm a despicable woman, and now they all hate me." "Can you blame them?" I calmly asked. "I gave you 7 of the best years of my life. All this time, I loved only you and never thought of another woman. I worked hard for you, bought that big house that you just had to have, bought you that new BMW. I never complained when you spent all your money on yourself, and I never complained when you spent all your money on yourself. When you went out supposedly with the girls. And what did I get in return? You rip out my heart. You betray me and destroy our marriage. So I don't blame them one bit." "Please, just give me another chance," she pleaded. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You could have ended this at any time, but you chose not to. So this is the end of the road. You chose your bed, and now you'll sleep in it. I hope it was worth it for you. I think you'll be served with the papers when we get to Springfield. Just sign the papers, and we'll be done with this. Then you and Jim can sleep with each other. I don't care." Mr. Duval, she said, "can I do anything to make amends before you?" "Yes," I said. "There is one thing. Actually, 2 things." Her eyes lit up with anticipation. "Disappear," I said. She fainted in tears as I turned and walked away. I struggled to hold back tears as I returned to my compartment. After I closed and locked the door, my phone rang. It was her parents. Apparently, they had seen the video I sent them. "George, what's going on?" Cliff, Johnny's father, asked. "Hello, Cliff," I said. "I caught your daughter with another man. I recorded the video and sent it to you. I'm filing divorce papers based on the prenuptial agreement. I think she'll be served when the train arrives in Springfield. I wanted you to know why I'm divorcing her." "Is there any way not to make a big deal out of this?" he asked. "I mean, divorce is so drastic." "No, Cliff," I said. "If you listen to what your daughter and her lover said, you'll understand that I can't just overlook her betrayal. I'm just a paycheck for her. She even wanted me to raise a child from another man." "That silly girl," he said. "I heard you disowned her," I said. "No," he said. "I asked her to give me at least one substantial reason not to disown her. I'm still waiting." "Well, anyway, I'm glad you made us sign that prenuptial agreement," I said. "Probably things didn't go as you imagined, but you did me a big favor." "I'm sorry, George," he said. "You're right, and since then, I've loved you like a son I never had." "I think highly of you two," I said. "Can we do something?" he asked. "Actually, yes," I said. "Do you still have that spare key to the house that I gave you?" "Yes, we do," he said. "Could you call a truck and get her things out of the house?" I asked. "I won't be in town for a couple of days, and I don't want her in the house. I'll reimburse you for the truck's cost." "Of course, we can do that," he said. "What about her car?" "You can take that too, but I'm not sure how long she'll be able to use it," I said. "Maybe you can teach her to budget, or perhaps she can trade it for something she can afford." "All right," he said. "Listen, George, I really regret all of this." "It's not your fault," I said. We said our goodbyes and ended the call. The phone rang the moment I put it in my pocket. It was Johnny's cousin, Lisa. I answered the call. "What do you want, Lisa?" I asked. "So, you finally found out about Johnny?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I suppose you're going to divorce my sister?" she asked. "Indeed," I said. "I've already taken some steps." "Okay," she said. "You know, I've always had a soft spot for you." Truth be told, I found Lisa damn attractive too, but I was married to her cousin, making her off limits. "Well, you're quite attractive yourself," I said. Lisa had a habit of wearing short skirts and tiny ripped shorts around me, always leaving me impressed. "So you noticed," she said. "Now that you've kicked her out, do you think we can sleep together?" she asked. "Maybe when the divorce is finalized," I said. "Okay, I understand," she said. "I've been waiting for you for 7 years, so I think I can wait a few more months. See you when you get back." The call ended, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Eventually, something good might come out of all this. The next 2 days passed rather quickly for me. Most of my time was spent talking on the phone. I rarely left my compartment to avoid facing those two traitors. I received information from Fred, confirming what I suspected. Jim Simpson was a notorious womanizer who'd been divorced twice due to infidelity. His last wife also accused him of domestic violence. I assumed Johnny would be inclined towards someone like him, but I hoped she would wake up in time and leave him. Shortly before the train arrived in Springfield, Johnny knocked on my door. "Who's there?" I asked through the closed door. "It's me, Johnny," she said. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want my husband back," she shouted. "And I want a faithful wife who would love me. But I didn't get that, did I?" "Please, Mr. Duval, I made a mistake," she exclaimed. "You went far beyond a mistake," I said. "Get out of here before I call security. You should be in economy class." "Please," she pleaded. Can't we just talk?" "No," I said. "Go away. I never want to see you again." I heard her sniffle as she walked away. Some part of me sympathized with her, but in reality, I couldn't care less. She brought all of this upon herself with her lies and disrespect. I got off the train and looked around to see if I could spot her and Jim. I saw them exiting the train a few cars away from here. Neither of them looked too happy. Good, I thought to myself. As I watched, a man approached Johnny and handed her an envelope made of thick paper. She opened it and immediately burst into tears. I smiled and walked away. I got into my car and drove home. I noticed Johnny's car was gone, and all her belongings were removed, including some pieces of furniture she had when we first got married. I packed up my things and walked through the house, removing all the photos that featured her. I wanted nothing to remind me of her. A couple of hours later, I heard a knock on the door. I looked out the window and saw Lisa. God, she looked attractive in those shorts. I opened the door and let her in. She carried a large dish with something that smelled like lasagna. She entered as if she were the mistress of the house and placed the dish on the kitchen table. When she turned to me again, I surveyed her from head to toe. She wore a short crop top that reached just below her chest. Her shorts were shorter than I remembered. "I wanted to make sure you have something tasty," she said. "I don't want you to go hungry." "Thank you, Lisa," I said. "I appreciate it." "I would love to," she said. "Go wash up, and I know where everything is." I headed upstairs and quickly freshened up before returning. By the time I came back, the table was set, and Lisa had even poured us each a glass of wine. I pulled out a chair for her, admiring her slender thighs as she sat down. She grabbed my plate and served a generous portion of lasagna, loaded with meat and layers of cheese. I thought it must have taken her a lot of effort. After she served herself a small portion, I looked at her. "It looks delicious," I said. "Thank you," she replied. "I love cooking, especially for those I truly care about." Indeed, the lasagna was as tasty as it looked, and I savored every bite, even wiping the plate clean with a piece of garlic bread she had baked. "You must have been hungry," she said. "I won't waste such delicious food for anything," I said. "It was the best lasagna I've ever had." She smiled, moving closer to me. "I'm glad you liked it," she said, sitting on my lap. "There's a lot more where that came from. And maybe someday, I'll even bring you dessert," she added, lifting her crop top to reveal her beautiful breasts. I felt a familiar stirring as she gave me a passionate kiss. "I need to get home and feed my cat, but I'll be back tomorrow." "I can't wait," I said. She smiled, getting up. "This is just a preview of what I've cooked up for you," she said. "I guess I'll have to let little George take care of me until your divorce is final." "Little George?" I asked. "That's what I call one device for lonely women," she said. "Got it," I said. "Well, let's hope Johnny doesn't contest the divorce." We shared a brief kiss before Lisa left. Fortunately, Johnny didn't resist the divorce. Apparently, she realized I had backed her into a corner and decided to end the marriage. She and Jim managed to keep their jobs. But from what I heard, it was a struggle. She signed the papers and called me to apologize, saying it was done. Fred called to inform me that the signed papers were filed, and in 30 days, I would be a free man. Was I happy? I was glad to be rid of the unfaithful wife. But some part of me felt that something was missing. I had loved only this woman for many years and hoped to retire with her surrounded by children and grandchildren. But that was not meant to be. I was also disappointed that I never got to take revenge on Jim. I had considered filing for an alienation of affection lawsuit, but Fred said it was a waste of time. I had thought about beating him to within an inch of his life, but retracted that idea since I didn't want to end up in prison. Lisa came every evening with something she had cooked, and we shared dinner. She even made a mark on my calendar, counting down the days until the divorce would be final. She was an untiring tease and even gifted me a couple of DVD discs filled with her selfies and home videos featuring little George. Soon, the 30 days passed, and I received the document stating that the divorce had been finalized. I was surprised that I hadn't heard anything from Johnny, as I expected her to have called or done something foolish by now, but she hadn't. Oh well. Lisa didn't wait for my call. She came that day and knocked on the door. I found it strange because I had already given her a key and told her she could come anytime. I opened the door and experienced the shock of my life. There she was on the front porch, completely naked. I ushered her inside and kissed her passionately, running my hands over her smooth skin. She kissed me back just as fervently, all the while stripping me of my clothes. As we embraced, I realized I had to be with this woman for the rest of my life. She must have thought the same. She turned on her side, looking into my eyes. "I've always loved you, George," she said. "I'll never treat you the way my foolish cousin did. I want to spend the rest of my life right here with you." "Does that mean you'll marry me?" I asked. She smiled and hugged me. "Yes, baby," she said. "I'll marry you and make you the happiest man on earth." We kissed and made love a little more before falling asleep in each other's arms. A few days later, Johnny's father called me. Lisa and I had just finished making love and were lying on the bed, watching a movie and sharing a bowl of popcorn. "George, Johnny is in the hospital," he said. I sat up, surprised. "What happened?" I asked. "That guy she was with beat her," he said. "I told her to call the police, but she refused." "Will she be okay?" I asked. "In the end, but I don't think it'll last if she stays with him," he said. "All right, we'll go there and check on her," I said. "We?" he asked. "Yes, Lisa and I said. "Lisa is with you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I couldn't handle this without her." "All right," he said. "We'll meet at the hospital." After we finished our conversation, I explained to Lisa what had happened and told her about what I had learned about Jim Simpson. We were both angry at Johnny for what she had done, but neither of us wanted to inflict physical pain on her. We freshened up, got dressed, and headed to the hospital. After speaking with the nurse, we were directed to her room. She looked terrible. Her face was bruised, and one eye was swollen shut. One arm was in a cast, and the other had an IV drip. She let out a weak moan as we entered the room. I wanted to hug her and assure her that everything would be okay, but I refrained. "Jay, Mr. Duval," she said, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "You can call me George," I said. "What happened?" "Jim wanted to use my car to take his girlfriend on a date, and I said, 'No,'" she slowly explained. "He got angry and started hitting me, calling me names. I told him it was my car, and almost half of my paycheck goes towards it. I wouldn't let him use it to impress some woman. He didn't stop beating me until I threatened to call 911. That's when he ran off. I don't know where he is." It was hard for me to breathe, and my chest hurt a lot, so I called 911, and they brought me here. "Did you tell the cops what happened?" Lisa asked. "No," she said. "I was afraid to. I thought if they put him in jail, he'd kill me when he got out." I shook my head at what I heard. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You ran away to live with the guy you slept with, and now he's sleeping with someone else. Is that true?" She sobbed and nodded. "Yes," she said. "I really messed up, didn't I?" "Yes, you did," Lisa said. "But you don't deserve this. He committed a crime, and he needs to be behind bars." "Johnny," I said, "did you know he had a history of domestic violence?" I knew he could be a bit rough, But no, I didn't know that, she said. Lisa hugged her cousin and tried to comfort her. Johnny noticed the diamond ring on Lisa's finger. "Are you engaged?" Johnny asked. Lisa smiled and nodded. "Yes," she said. "George and I are getting married." Johnny started sobbing, and her tears soaked Lisa's shirt. "But you're still my cousin, and I still love you, even though I think you were foolish for what you did to George." Just at that moment, Johnny's parents entered the room. They were furious when Lisa and I explained what had happened. "All right," said Cliff Johnny. "We'll stay here with you and take you back home when you're discharged. You'll stay with us until you can stand on your own." He looked at me and gestured to step into the corridor. "What do you know about this guy Simpson?" he asked. I told him what I had learned from Fred, and he nodded, mentally taking notes. "And you say he works with Johnny?" "Yes," I said. He nodded again. "All right, I'll take care of Simpson," he said. "I'm not going to discuss this with you. You don't need to know the details. Trust me." "What about Lisa?" "Well, she helped me get through the divorce, and now we're engaged," I said. He smiled and nodded. "I'm not surprised," he said. "She's always had feelings for you." "Thank you," I said. "Can I help with Simpson?" He shook his head. "No," he said. "I'll handle everything. Besides, you're getting married soon, and the last thing Lisa needs is her new husband in jail. The less you know, the better." Cliff walked down the corridor talking to someone on his mobile phone. I headed back to Johnny's room. Johnny's mother looked at us. "I'll stay with her for the night," she said. "Cliff will take care of getting her things from that guy's apartment. Thank you for stopping by." "You're welcome," I said, hugging her. Johnny looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said, "for everything. Can you forgive me?" I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I think so," I said, realizing that two other women were watching me. After all, we're still going to be family. "Thank you," she said. I approached and hugged her in farewell. "Get well soon," I said, gently kissing her forehead. "Take good care of him," Johnny said to Lisa. "Please." Lisa smiled and nodded. "I intend to," she said. We left the hospital and headed home. I had no idea what Cliff meant regarding Jim, but I had heard stories about his military service. I also knew he had connections in high and low places, so I kept an eye on local news, even checking obituaries. I didn't find anything, but a week later, a small article appeared in the local newspaper about a man being attacked and brutally beaten near a local bar. According to the story, a man named Jim Simpson had encountered a group of men who eventually broke 3 of his ribs, his jaw, kneecap, and arm. Cliff retrieved Johnny's belongings from the apartment and brought her back to his home. Her parents despised what she had done to me, but she was still their daughter, and they still loved her. Lisa and I got married a couple of months later. Since her parents had died in a car accident a few years ago, Cliff walked her down the aisle and shook my hand. Johnny came with her parents and cried when the minister declared us husband and wife. We had a fantastic honeymoon in Las Vegas. Upon our return, we moved her things into the house. She decided that, as I was making more than enough for both of us, she would quit her job. "Now I have a new job," she told me. "What is it?" I asked. "To make you happy," she said with a mischievous smile. And she did. And then one day, a few months later, she dropped words every man fears. "We need to talk," she said after I came home from work. "Is something wrong?" I asked, fearing her answer. "Well," she said, "we'll need to redo one of the bedrooms." "Why?" I asked. She smiled. "Because," she said, "you're going to be a dad." I jumped for joy and enveloped her in a hug, covering her face with kisses. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I'm the happiest man in the world," I said. Then take me upstairs and show me just how happy you are, big guy, she said. And I did, again and again. Yes, I thought, sometimes life gives you lemons. And sometimes, in return, you get something much better.